Mentalist is fit that wives should submit to their husbands submissively, weakly. Though whatever they say, their wives should obey, unquestioning, stupidly, meekly.
I think men want women to be women and feminine.
Our husbands would make us their own dictum take, without ever a wherefore or why for it.
I'm quite prepared to let man remain the superior being.
But I don't and I can't, and I won't and I shan't. No, I will speak my mind if I die for it.
How was it that I got the right to vote? And how was it that I got equal pay for equal work? Who were the people who wrote those books? Who were the people who held those marches? Who were the people who put their lives on the line?
I suppose I was first a feminist and became a feminist at the age of 3, which is a bit ridiculous, but I can still very clearly remember my kindergarten teacher telling me when we had the percussion band that the boys got the drums and the cymbals and the girls got the triangles and the tambourines, and I can remember at that stage saying that's not fair.
I think it is a vulgarism to stoop to such an action for women to want to frequent the atmosphere of a public bar. In other words, I don't think it's a place for a woman to be.
There had been a kind of joke about chaining ourselves to the bar. My only originality was that I didn't think it was a joke.
It wasn't a very expensive protest. The dog chain cost only 5 and 6, and the padlocks were only 2 bob each. But whatever the cost the women felt, it was the principle of the thing that mattered.
We expected some publicity. Well, otherwise would you do it at all? But this got world publicity.
It's really hard to explain what it was like growing up in the 50s and the 60s, with the assumption that there were a lot of jobs you couldn't have. You couldn't walk into any bar and have a drink. You were allowed to drink in the ladies' lounge, which was nice. You would go to school, you would leave school early.
If you were lucky, you would get some sort of training, like to be a secretary. Otherwise, you'd go into a factory, then you'd marry and you'd give up work and have a baby and set about raising a family.
There was just a set of expectations that you were going to be this warm, supportive person who didn't really enjoy sex but put up with it because it was there, that you were going to have babies and you were going to sort of have as many as happened because access to abortion and the pill was pretty dicey.
Women at home with children were utterly dependent on their husband's wage and the whim of their husband as to whether they received any money.
It was a world in which we had relatively limited choices, and it was articulated that we should have limited choices because we were a woman.
Going into town one day in the train, there were 3 women sitting opposite me. Well, John says this. Oh, that's interesting. Dick says the same thing. Oh, and Sam says blah, blah, blah. And after a while, I thought, I can't stand it. No, I leaned across and I said, what do you say? What do you think?
There was this old-fashioned idea of status. I am the male, I am the head of the family, and it's my responsibility to provide for the family. And this was being challenged with women going to work.
When I went to take possession of the beautiful office in Treasury Place, walked in the door and the fellow, he came over. Can I help you, sir? Right, so I looked at him and I said, this is John Halloran, who is a senior member of my staff, and I'm the Speaker of the House, not the gentleman.
The campaign for equal pay was so vital. I walked to the Commonwealth building and chained myself through the door handles. I'd never done anything so astonishingly over the top in my life.
In my view, and in the view of most thinking males, we still regard them as the gentler sex that we should protect.
When do you think women will no longer need to be protected?
I don't think ever.
If you didn't want to just spend your life being sort of smiling, nice and supportive and doing what men told you, you got cross, and we did.
Everyone carried a banner of some sort or blew whistles. We were very noisy, very vocal.
You had practically only to hang a sign out saying, feminist meeting here, and you'd be flooded out.
Women's liberation was very self-consciously revolutionary. They wanted to change the world, and so they aimed at changing quite basic structures, including the meaning of femininity and masculinity, including conventional sex roles. They realised that sexism had permeated the whole world, the production of knowledge, the production of culture, the production of history. So it was a quite radical, demanding movement that captivated the hearts and minds of a whole generation, particularly of young women.
Our mother came with us to an International Women's Day march. That night, her whole face filled up the TV screen, and her very straight relative rang her up and said, "Dorothy, was that you I saw on, ABC News tonight at an International Women's Day march?" And she said, "Yes, John." And he said, "What were you doing there?" And she said, "John, I'm a feminist."
International Women's Day was really becoming a mass idea that had gripped more and more people, and all the tentative steps we'd made were bearing fruit.
What's been happening recently is that groups like Women's Electoral Lobby and the Women's Liberation Group have made government and people and women themselves aware of their problems and become sensitive to a whole wide range of issues affecting women.
Women's refuges were funded. Rape crisis centres were funded, rape laws were changed, domestic violence laws were changed. We also got the changes to the Family Law Act through, so we got no-fault divorce.
They promised things that now seem to us rather curious, to abolish the luxury tax on contraceptives. They moved to promise an expansion in childcare. That was extremely important to women's ongoing campaign to win equality in the workforce.
And then it gradually began to snowball, not only in Australia but around the world.
There was a strong feeling of optimism. There was a feeling that society could be changed and we could make it better.
The sentiment was that women could do anything and that women were on the move.
I think given a choice, most Aboriginal women would want the very things that the women's libbers are running away from. A house in comfort, in a reasonable area with some basic facilities. So women's liberation really doesn't mean anything to us.
By the late 1980s into the 1990s, a number of women started to say to women's liberationists, when you talk about women, which women do you mean? Who are you speaking for? So we have quite a different sort of women's politics now. Women, in fact, come from a large diversity of backgrounds. Often they will have different priorities, even as at the same time they might also have interests in common.
My mother could not support my brother and sister, so I decided to quit school and join her working in the factory. Many of these women support their family with their little salary. There are a lot of women who suffer and being exploited every day, and they don't know that they are being exploited. We feel that this is unfair, but we don't know what can we do and who can support us.
We are not able to point to any given setting where women have achieved full equality.
The message to young women is you might think you're equal, but mate, you're not. You earn less. You earn less per hour, you earn less over your lifetime. You do a heap of unpaid work because somebody's got to do it. You don't run things, you don't decide things, so don't have the illusion that you've got choice.
Women are still subject to domestic violence. They're still subject to abuse or sexual violence and rape. And we can't change the world until we get together to do that collectively.
What we want is to bring women together and start to talk. I met many different activists when I joined the international conference. They are amazing. They have done a lot of things for their country and their community. So I want to bring those concepts and what can we do in our country.
On their own, women can do very, very little. But together, women can achieve substantial social and political and economic change.
we have today because of a lot of women have sacrificed for us. So why we are quiet? We should do something for the next generation.
We can focus our energies forward and think about all the things that we want to change and think about what it would mean for us to live in a world where people could live with dignity.
We're standing on the shoulders of the women who came before us, and you're standing on our shoulders. And you see a little further than we did, or hopefully you do.
Here comes the woman with a new opportunity.